you may soon be able to order a flying car with Uber. And this could be happening as soon as next year. You can see right away that electric aircraft manufacturer Joby Aviation plans to launch commercial air taxis in New York City and Los Angeles by late 2025 as a more efficient alternative to driving or taking the train. So the vehicle, or eVTOL, I'm not sure, takeoff and landing vehicle, would shuttle people around between airports and city centers for the price of a cab. That's really intriguing to me. We'll talk about that in a second. And allows customers to cut their travel time from hours to just minutes by avoiding congestion. I think especially here in LA, that could not be more important, right? If you look at New York, I feel like getting around is way more feasible, especially with the MTA or the Metro, but, and they expect these vehicles to receive a warm welcome from the city residents, sick of hearing loud helicopters overhead. So it seems like they're quiet. I mean, that's what they're kind of implying here, that they're fully electric, fully quiet, and it's no pipe dream. They have secured hundreds of millions of dollars of investments from Toyota, Delta Airlines, and Uber, with which it has a strategic partnership to launch its commercial air taxi service by 2025, pending regulatory approval. And one last thing to show you, this is how they look. So I don't know if I'd call it, a self-driving car. It's more of like a kind of an airplane-ish design, more of a helicopter design. Kind of cool. This is actually a very majestic picture there. But I will say the wingspan's pretty long. It seems like to me, was that one I just looked at? Was it here? Yeah, it seems like a pretty long wingspan, but this is how they look in relation to one person. It seems like it might fit, what is that? Maybe not just one person, maybe 2 or 3 people. So maybe similar to a normal Uber or maybe max 3 or 4. I'm not sure, but this is the future. A lot to unpack here because one, it is a very future thing. I mean, let's be honest, when it came to vehicles being created, the idea of self-driving vehicles, self-driving cars, etc., has always been on the horizon. Like they mentioned Jetsons as an example, right? That's always been kind of a thing that's talked about when it comes to in the future, we're going to have flying cars. I did hear a lot of reports, though, and different opinions of saying that would never happen. I know Elon Musk, for example, has come out and said, look, if you look at the feasibility of that, what happens if something falls off from a flying taxi or whatever and hits somebody and potentially kills them, right? So Elon Musk seemed to have the opinion that when it comes to things flying overhead, that was never going to happen. I think he had more of the theory of opposite, where things would be more underground than above ground. But seems like this is something that may happen in almost a year. They say late 2025. It's the end of October, the end of spooky season in 2024 right now. So potentially in a year from this video, this could be happening. And what's kind of great is that this does happen, and like they said, in LA, I will definitely be taking one and doing a video about it. So stay tuned for that, pending 1 year, right? Depending on what happens. Couple of interesting things about this, though. Like I said, one is it seems like if, say, this gets approved, that flying vehicles in general are going to be a thing now, right? In general. Now, I don't know if this could be a personal thing, because I can see that causing issues. But maybe they're saying, okay, if it's just a company that's shuttling you, I guarantee they're going to have to focus on airways, because, God forbid, to crash into each other. I also have a bunch of questions about, just the overall movement of how these are going to fly around. Obviously, I know they're probably working on that. Where with an airplane maybe being super high, maybe they'll take up the mid-range of the sky. I'm not sure, right? But of course, with the logistics, they have a bunch of people who are unbelievably smart, definitely working on this. But I think the big thing for me is this is kind of another interesting thing, like I've said in so many videos, with Uber kind of putting their hands into, because you have things like Uber Charter to rent a party bus. You have Uber Explorer to book concert tickets, and even things like hotels. You have, of course, regular Uber. You have, you can rent cars through Uber, not just renting a car and a driver, but also if you want to rent a car in general, as opposed to going to Enterprise, you rent through Uber. There's so many things Uber's putting its hands into, and I feel like this is one that I'm very interested about. One, because self-driving cars are super popular, and I know Uber's already working with Waymo, and I've done a bunch of videos about Waymo. So Uber's already kind of progressed in this futuristic technology. But two, now Uber and Joby, was it Joby or Joby? I keep calling it Joby. I'm not sure. Tomato, maybe. I'm not sure. But with Joby, I would keep calling it Joby. With Uber partnering with them, Uber's really on the forefront of all this futuristic traveling technology and equipment and engineering. And this is going to be, I think the big one for me that's going to be most interesting about this is the price. Because initially, if someone said, would you want to spend money to go from LAX, I'm not going to lie, the Los Angeles airport, or LAX airport, is a nightmare. Because when you want to leave, in case you didn't know, there's something called the LA exit. And getting to the airport, you can get dropped off by an Uber or Lyft. But when it comes to leaving the airport, you have to get off your plane, maybe go to get your bag, if you checked a bag. You then leave. You then walk and you wait for another shuttle. The shuttle then picks you up and you're packed in like sardines. It then drives you around and brings you all the way to this specific designated pickup area for Ubers and Lyfts and taxis. Then you get an Uber and Lyft. It's sometimes it's an extra hour on top of your traveling time. So that's why if someone picks you up at the airport here in LA, you're thankful. Getting dropped off isn't as big of a deal. Yes, I will say as a hack for all my LA people out there, you can order an Uber Black or Lyft Black, basically a luxury ride. So sometimes people are saying, hey, you know what? It's either going to be a $20 Uber to go home or $40 Uber Black. I'd rather spend the extra $20, get picked up by curbside, and not have to deal with the shuttle and the LA exit and everything. And that being said, imagine being like, okay, I can either spend, like say, $20 for a taxi, which I still have to get to the LA exit, I still have to take that shuttle, or I do this. Now, granted, is it going to be another LA exit thing? I don't know, because they are specifically talking about the airport. So it does seem to be that maybe you do still have to take that shuttle. So I think people might say, hey, you know what? I'm still going to get an Uber Black or Lyft Black if I'm trying to go for convenience. But this also skips all the traffic, all the congestion that exists in LA. Again, I think in New York, although it's going to be way better for sure than getting around with the MTA or taxis, I still feel like with New York, it is still a little bit less of a traffic-y thing compared to LA and the congestion that exists within LA. Another thing I will say, which is going to be interesting with Joby, and obviously I know they're working on this and probably figuring it out, is how the logistics are going to work when it comes to pickup and drop off. Now, obviously at the airport, designated pickup location. But when it comes to the drop off, like they're, you know, I don't think they can just drop you off. I mean, with the size of this, I don't think they can just drop you off at your house, right? So I also wonder, is it going to be a multi-step thing that actually may turn into more of a hassle? Like if I have to, like, say, get off the airplane, walk and get my bag if I checked a bag, get in a shuttle, take the shuttle to the LA exit, and like say there's a Joby section, I get in this thing, it flies me then to like some other part of LA, there's like a designated like landing pad, so much like a helicopter landing pad. I then get out, then I have to Uber or take a Lyft again to get to my house. You're talking about so many steps that, yeah, maybe this skips the congestion of LA, but it's now adding on an extra step because I still have to take another Uber Lyft back from the landing pad, right? And great, like maybe it will be more convenient. I don't know, but I still feel like there's no way this is going to pick you up curbside, right? At the LA airport. There's no way this is going to pick you up curbside. So you're still going to have to get to this, which tells me that I wonder, although it seems good in theory, and granted, I'm still talking just about the LA airport, right? I'm just talking about the LA airport, that although this seems good in theory, I do wonder if it actually in practicality will actually be faster or even more convenient, because I can see this being more of a hassle. Like of having to get to it, as opposed to an Uber Black or Lyft Black, having to then get dropped off at a designated location, then having to Uber back or Lyft back. You know, I don't think it can, like I said, I don't think it can just drop you off right at your house with how big this thing is. You know, the landing, the tricky thing, like I don't know how that's going to work. And if anything, this might actually turn out to be more expensive. Like, yes, it's saying for the price of a cab, and that sounds appealing at first. We'll see what happens, but it seems like maybe it actually will be about the same price, right, as a normal Uber, and it won't be too much more expensive, but you still have to factor in the time. Then you also have to factor in the fact that you probably have to get another ride share to get back to your house from where it lands and drops you off. That being said, though, if let's say there's one that's kind of close to me and I can get in it, it can bring me from, like, say, here and, like, say, the southwest part of LA by, like, Marina del Rey, Playa del Rey, Santa Monica, and it can bring me to, like, say, downtown LA, which is going diagonal when it comes to Los Angeles is a nightmare, and there's designated, like, landing pads, that to me is way more feasible now. If you ignore the airport part, which I feel like this is probably what's going to be mostly used for, at least initially, if you ignore the airport part, I can see this actually being a pretty good thing. But even so, there's a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to the logistics. Because although it seems good in theory, like I said, I can see this just being way more of a hassle. Now, you never know though. I do know using like helicopters and everything and getting around has been existed for forever. Like I remember when I was doing videos for Coachella and doing all the Coachella parties, it's about like a 45-minute drive from Palm Springs to Coachella when it comes to the festival. And I remember they would have helicopter rides. It'd be like $300. And the idea is that, yeah, it's going to be $300, but you skip all the BS of all the traffic going to and from there. And it's going to be faster too. So there are all these like little kind of things, but I don't know. I feel like, although at first it's like, oh, whoa, future self-driving, or I keep saying self-driving. Actually, wait, is there going to be a pilot? No, I didn't even think about that. I'd be curious to see. I mean, I'm assuming there's going to be a pilot. So it's not going to be self-driving, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's a thing. But there's probably going to be a pilot. But, you know, although it seems cool at first, if I'm this like flying car, flying vehicle that you can order with Uber, it's like going to be Uber, Uber Black, Uber X Share, Joby. How feasible is it going to be? I'm not entirely sure.